Hi everyone, welcome back to our Genesis lessons. Today we're going to study Genesis 20. It is the story of Abraham and Abimelek. Two very important names throughout the Bible. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. And before I start, I'm going to go ahead and pray our normal prayer. Alright? Dear Lord, open my eyes that I may see wonderful things in your law. Amen. So remember, that is from Psalm 119:18, okay? And we're going to go ahead and start reading. I'm in a little bit of a different setup now. So, yay, okay. Before we start, I did want to say, if you were here last week, and the last 2 weeks, we went through the story of the 3 visitors and the stories of how Sodom and Gomorrah, how Abraham cried out to God for Sodom and Gomorrah, and how eventually they were destroyed. And now Abraham's descendants, like him and his wife and their future child, and their future children are like they're on their way, because if you remember, Abraham did have a child with the servant, with Hagar, and his name was Ishmael. In Spanish, I guess we could say Ismael. And so they haven't had their own child, but there's still that promise. However, from last week, I did want to mention that Lot's descendants continued, and if you remember, it's more of a sensitive topic because it's very deep sin. But just to let you know, the daughters of Lot had Moab, who's the father of the Moabites of today. I'm reading off Genesis 19:36 through 38. And then the other daughter also had a son and named him Ben-Ami. Ben-Ami, he is the father of the Ammonites of today. So those the Moabites and the Ammonites came from Lot's descendants. And a thing to note is that throughout the Bible, the Moabites and the Ammonites typically do not like the Jews, and it just became a different line of blood from Abraham. So yeah, they're not very nice people to the Israelites. So I just wanted to point that out. So we're going to get ahead and start. It says in Genesis 20, it says, "Now Abraham moved on from there into the region of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. So remember, Abraham's in a place where he can see, he can smell and see how bad it is and where the smoke was. So it says in Genesis 19, it says when he got up the next morning, he could see and he could smell the smoke of how bad Sodom and Gomorrah had been destroyed. So he moved from there. It says, for a while he stayed in Gerar, and then Abraham said of his wife Sarah, 'She is my sister.' Then Abimelek, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her." So if you remember, Abraham, before becoming Abraham, he lied to the Egyptians and said that Sarah was his sister because she was so pretty, and they would probably kill him to get her and all that, because I guess the kings could do that back then, which is kind of sad, but that's just how it was. So he lied again, even after his lesson, which to me is just a constant reminder of how even the most biblical people that we look up in the Bible, like the most godly people, they even made mistakes, and they're written in the Bible. So mistakes are part of life. It's what we learn from them that really changes and can really please God if you end up learning from your mistake. It says, verse 3, "But God came to Abimelek in a dream one night." Abimelek, again, he's the king of Gerar. and said to him, "You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She's a married woman." He's talking about Sarah. Obviously, the king could take whoever he wanted. I'm guessing it's the situation here. It says, "Now Abimelek had not gone near her, so he said, 'Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Did he not say to me, she's my sister, and didn't she also say, he is my brother? I have done this with a clear conscience and clean hands.'" So it says Abimelek had not like kissed her or given her a hug. He hadn't known her. I guess he had just picked her, or like admired her beauty and all that, but he hadn't like formed a relationship with her or anything personal like that. So he asked God, like, will you not forgive my nation, because we had no idea, because Abraham and Sarah both lied again. It says, verse 6, "Then God said to him in the dream." So this is crazy because God's speaking to them in dreams. And again, he can do whatever he wants, but visions and all that is so cool, in my personal opinion. It says, "Yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, and so I have kept you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her." Verse 7, "Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure that you and all who belong to you will die." So basically, Abimelek has a curse placed on him because of Abraham and Sarah's lies. But he's like, "God, please forgive me, because I had no idea they lied to me." He's like, "Yeah, I know they lied to you," and he's a prophet, so he just has to pray. Return the woman, and he'll pray, and then none of the people you love and care for will die. It says, verse 18, "Early the next morning, Abimelek summoned all his officials, and when he told them all that had happened, they were very much afraid." So if you notice, it says early the next morning. So he obeyed right away, and in a lot of ways he had some type of fear of God. So that's important. And the officials were very much afraid. Verse 9, "Then Abimelek called Abraham and said, 'What have you done to us? How have I wronged you that you have brought such great guilt upon me and my kingdom? You have done things to me that should never be done,'" lying, causing him to sin and all that. Verse 10, "And Abimelek asked Abraham, 'What was your reason for doing this?' So Abimelek questions Abraham with every right, because Abraham is in his kingdom of Gerar. And in verse 11 it says, "Abraham replied, 'I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife.'" Again, because she's so beautiful, they're going to want to take the wife, you know. It says, verse 12, "Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and then she became my wife. And when God had me wander from my father's household, I said to her, this is how you can show your love to me. Everywhere we go, say of me, he is my brother.'" Now, in this part, it's a little tricky to me, because it's very obvious that if there's a very clear distinction between Israelites and Ammonites and Moabites, that the line is going to be pure, and they're going to, be all family. So I think it's like it doesn't really make sense, if you ask me, to say, "Oh, she's my sister because we're all the same family." So I thought that was kind of rude of Abraham and kind of like outsmarting the king. So yeah, I just want to say that, because he's like, "Yeah, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother." And so it says, and then he even justified her, because obviously, as we've discussed before, women in this culture are not seen as very highly. So, like in the book, when we talked about, in the earlier books of Genesis, where we talked about Noah, like his wife and the wives of his sons were not even mentioned. And so in this time, the woman is really seen as less, so she has to do everything that her husband tells her to. And I'm not saying that it's wrong to obey your husband or your future husband as woman, or that in the future that that your wife submits to you as a male. But in this time, from what I've read, I can make like a safe assumption or comment, not assumption because it's clear in the Bible, but like a comment that the woman really had to do everything the husband said, and they probably were not really allowed to talk or anything like that. So she was literally just doing what her husband told her to do, and because they both wanted to survive. And yeah, so in part, the way Abraham justifies himself, the first thing is he says, well, they don't fear God, so they're going to kill my wife. But clearly, Abimelek feared God in some way because he obeyed instantly, right? He obeyed the next day, the next morning. He had some type of fear and knowledge of God. And then he's like, she's technically my sister, which is obvious because you're in the same bloodline. That's just how it happened back in the day, right? Especially if you're all from Noah. You're all going to be of the same blood or whatever. And then ultimately he's like, I told my wife to do this. So, yeah. Kind of dug a hole for themselves and they lied, so not very good consequences, clearly. Verse 14. Then Abimelek brought sheep and cattle and male and female slaves, and gave them to Abraham, and he returned Sarah his wife to him. So Abimelek gave back Sarah and gave back some animals. Now to them, animals are important. They're like giving people food or a car or a house. It's kind of a weird tradition that we don't practice because we don't give each other animals. At least in the United States. Which I'm not saying it's like a bad thing. I don't mean to misjudge anyone, but it's something that we don't practice anymore. Probably still practice it over there in the Middle East. So it's like kind of saying like I'm sorry. And then it says in verse 15, and Abimelek said, my land is before you, live wherever you like. So Abimelek even offers his kingdom and allows them to live wherever they would like. And then it says, to Sarah he said, I am giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. This is to cover the offense against you before all who are with you, and you are completely vindicated. 1,000 shekels is about 25 pounds, or about 12 kilograms. So about 25 pounds of silver coins. So he paid Abraham, and he specifically talked to Sarah, which you don't really talk to men unless they talk to you. It's kind of like this culture, as we've noticed before. So the king said that to Sarah. It says, verse 17, then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelek, his wife, and his female slaves, so they could have children again. For the Lord had kept all the women in Abimelek's household from conceiving because of Abraham's wife, Sarah. So Abraham at the end prayed, and we are revealed that the woman from the kingdom of Gerar that belonged to Abimelek, which was probably most women, and the slaves, and all the girl kids, I guess, were kind of sterile for meanwhile that Sarah was there. We obviously don't know how long she was there. They were all sterile, so they couldn't have kids. Their bodies couldn't come together and make children genetically. So that was kind of messed up. So I don't know about you, but like to think that you can't have children is probably very harsh because it's a kingdom and they want to continue their legacy and all of that. And again, tying again with the male-female thing, if you had a daughter, you had to have a son because he would be the next king and all that. So, yeah. Abraham and Sarah did a very bad thing by lying, and they were really putting an entire nation at risk. So, this is the end of Genesis 20. And to me, it's very interesting again because it shows mistakes that people make, and also to not make an assumption about who's Christian or not, because that's literally what Abraham did, and he got in so much trouble. He's like, I didn't think these people feared God, so I just came in here and lied, you know. And so it's teaching us history from Genesis. It's teaching us more about Abraham and Sarah, which is our current character. It's teaching us about obeying God when he says to do something, and also not to lie or to assume people's relationship with God. And I mean, that it just comes to mind in Samuel when God's looking for David, and he's like, man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And so that is another part of it, because Abimelek, he might have not been a perfect Christian. He might have not been a prophet, just like Abraham was, but he feared God in some way, and he obeyed him in the way that he could. So I'm going to find this verse because it's very important to me that I find it, and I show it to you guys. And again, then looks at the outward appearance. Again, this is sorry, I have a bunch of notes on my Bible, and I'm trying to look for where I put it, because I do not remember where I put it. But anyways, I'll find it and I will put it in the downward description, because it came up to me when I was teaching, and I didn't think it was going to be part of the plan, but God does that. He is able to do that. Just in this instance where he was able to clear that that kind of sickness of not being able to have children, and when Sarah was given back to Abraham. And so, yeah, God just showed me that verse in my brain, and it didn't come up, so I'll go ahead and write it in the comments. But again, I hope you learned something new today. This is part of the reason for Genesis lessons, is to learn a book of the Bible and learn it in a version that is appropriate for your younger youth age. And I hope that it just makes you want to study more. And if you haven't watched other videos from Genesis lessons, make sure to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and pray. I'll put in the verse in the description box, and I will go ahead and dismiss. And thank you for watching, whoever's watching right now or in the future. Okay, guys. Dear Lord, thank you for another day of life, and thank you for this amazing opportunity that we have to study your Bible and your book of Genesis, regardless of whether you're online or, in person or online. And I just ask that you keep us safe, that you help us to not lie, to not assume things about people, and to be aware that you still make miracles and you still can change a curse or a sickness. And we just praise you, and we know we can reach to you whenever we want by praying, and we know you're listening, Lord. In your precious name I pray. Thank you. Amen. So that is it for today. Make sure that if you haven't watched the past videos, that you go ahead and do that, because they're interesting and they're for you. So that is it for today, and I will see you hopefully very soon. And yeah, appreciate you guys. Bye bye.